So bringing people onto the campaign to help you achieve your goal is going to be the next step in the campaign. You filed to run for office, you've got your campaign plan put together, you've done a good deal of your own research, you've had your initial meetings with the party. Now it's time to get people onto the campaign. So what I found works best in almost every scenario is to have a campaign manager and a field organizer. You don't want your field organizer to be your campaign manager. These need to be two different people. There's just too much happening on the campaign. And if your campaign manager is busy overseeing field staff, recruiting volunteers, doing all these things, they don't have time to do the other things like organize events, help coordinate fundraising, and so forth. So this is going to be really important to make sure you have these two people. Now, if you're on a bigger campaign, of course you can pay a campaign manager. But if not, then you're going to have to rely on a volunteer. One of the first things I do, whether you're hiring them or bringing on a volunteer, would be to send them some kind of training. The Leadership Institute is key for doing this. You can send them to training for about anything at the Leadership Institute. And if they're volunteering on your campaign, the campaign just needs to cough up the money to do this training to make this happen, especially if it's a volunteer. Send them to DC, get them trained, and make sure that your campaign is ready to go. So using volunteers for those two positions would be fine, especially if it's a smaller race and there's just less happening. If you're working on a state legislative campaign and there's going to be a tough primary, you're probably going to need to invest resources in hiring people who have a little bit more experience or to do this full time. And that's going to be a key. I've not seen state legislative candidates succeed without that combination of staff. If you've got a really dynamic candidate who is just super energetic. In fact, I think my state senator just won. I don't think he had any professional staff, but he was really experienced. So he was able to pull it off because he was just a hell of a hard worker. That is 1% of candidates are like him. And so even if you see another politician running for office and they don't have these people in place, that doesn't mean you shouldn't, because there's a lot that gets missed when you don't do that. Campaign manager and field organizer, those got to be your first two people that you bring on the campaign. The next person you're going to need is a treasurer. And this is going to be the person that just handles your campaign filings and your paperwork. They make sure that the donation page is working on the website and so forth. And they also pay for things. So they need to be someone who has time to sit down a couple times a week just to write the checks that need to be written or pay for things that need to be paid for based on the campaign budget. And once you have your campaign budget put together with a timeline, the treasurer will know when they need to pay for what so these things happen. And so this is a part-time position. You shouldn't need to pay someone for it, but you may need to pay an accountant a little bit for their time if you don't have your spouse doing it or another volunteer who's going to handle it for you. The fourth person you're going to want is a volunteer coordinator. And this is different than the field organizer depending on the size of your race. A volunteer coordinator will specifically focus on making sure volunteers have the things that they need, that they know where they're going to be, and so forth. Whereas your field organizer is going to be focusing their energy on making sure people have walk books, identifying the communities where they need to walk, organizing events, inviting voters to campaign events. Your volunteer coordinator will be working with the volunteers that the field organizer has recruited to make sure that they're able to work as a force multiplier. And so the volunteer coordinator should be really any kid will do. Any extrovert that's really nice and good with people will work well in this position. And you have to make sure that they will help volunteers do what they're willing to do on the campaign. You don't want to try to have a volunteer coordinator that makes people knock on doors when they're just not comfortable with that. So you have to find people and put them where they need to go. Next person that you're going to want to try to find is a finance director. You'll actually need a finance committee regardless of the level of office that you're running for. This should be a group of 5 to 10 individuals who will not only invest in the campaign, but will also work to help raise more money as part of your comprehensive fundraising strategy. And so you just start with one person. Sometimes they're called the campaign chairman, or sometimes we'll just call them the finance chairman. And they'll help to coordinate with you and work within your campaign fundraising strategy to get that implemented. And so these are the basic things that you're going to need on any campaign. And as the campaign gets larger, you'll also need a social media director, a communications director, and policy director. And so you're having these people in place With the social media director, they're going to coordinate your TikTok videos, your Instagram feeds, all your tweets that are going to be going out throughout the day. They're going to be the ones that the volunteers send photos to make sure that the right photos of volunteers interacting with voters get posted on social media and so forth. And so a social media coordinator can be really important. And we used to just have a communications director do it, but this is a whole separate thing. I have the social media coordinator handle everything, handle social media posts, whereas the communications director is going to handle the messaging, and they're going to coordinate with digital vendors who are going to do your paid advertising, and they'll do press releases. They're the ones that are going to interact with the media and get you interviews. They're also going to, and they're going to do some, write out your comments and so forth. So these are separate positions, and they can be combined by someone who's really talented, or if you're on a small campaign and there's just not a lot happening and you don't need 5 posts on Twitter a day, then sure, your communications director can handle that. But when you get on the bigger races, you're going to need to have more professional people. Sometimes vendors will try to volunteer and they'll offer you free consulting if you spend your money at their firm to do your digital media or their mail or your mail or whatnot. You don't want to do that. These are not professionals who are focused on this. And anytime I've seen, especially a vendor try to double as a consultant, it does not work well. It doesn't work well because that's not what they do. But that digital media vendor may know their digital media really well, and that's the key. So working with these key staff members is going to be really important on the campaign. And then they will interact with vendors as needed. Vendors are not a part of your campaign. No matter how much they'll try to make you feel like that, these are salesmen. And their job is just to get as much money out of you as possible. And so when you're working with the vendors, then the people on your campaign team will need to make sure that they are doing what you want them to do. I think the smartest thing you can do when you want to hire staff is to bring people in who have no experience and send them to the Leadership Institute for training. That's what I would prefer to do, with the exception of people who have worked with people that I know and have used similar things, and I kind of know where they're coming from. But I have the experience to train people to do the job the way I want it done, and I don't have to depend on their inexperience, or their bad previous training is not going to be a problem for me when I can tell them what to do. If you're watching this video and you're an amateur or you just got started, you don't have that luxury, which is why you should send them for training to do it. And if they told you they've been trained by the Republican Party, don't trust that, because you don't really know who was actually doing that. A lot of times these people are staffed by folks that are like, yeah, they're 20 and they have 0 experience. They work 1 election cycle and now they're considered a professional, because the party does a terrible job of keeping campaign professionals. There's very few people who have done it as long as I have, because they usually go off to work as staff or end up in insurance or real estate. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about those two things, but we've lost a lot of really good operatives that I've worked with in the past to that, and they're successful. It's like, maybe I should have done that. I guess it's not too late. So anyway, so keep these things in mind when you're wanting to hire staff. And don't hesitate to leave questions in the comments if you're putting together a political campaign, especially if you're a campaign manager for the first time and you don't know what you're doing. Just hire a consultant to tell you if you can't go and get trained. Because there's plenty of experienced consultants around the country. Well, depending on how they bill, right? Because what'll happen is you'll bring on a consultant. They'll charge you $3,000 to $7,000 a month, and you'll only talk to them twice a month. And it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I would never do that. Like, I meet with my people once a week just to make sure they keep on. But we actually don't need to meet that often, but customer service is really important. But I'm by myself. Like, I don't have a firm with 50 clients. And what these firms do, these big firms like to bring on 50 clients, and then they'll tell you, hey, we won 55 Republican races last year. Well, yeah, you won 55 races, but you lost 70 because you wouldn't return their phone calls, or you screwed up their mail because you have too many clients. Or they're the kind of big firm that will only take races in plus 15 Republican districts. So duh, of course you won. Like, anybody could win. They could have won without you. In a plus 15 Republican district, you don't have to campaign. You can just go have coffee at the local diner and campaign there and still win your race. I mean, you should campaign and engage with the public, but you don't have to in that scenario. Make sure you bring on people that you like. That's really more important than anything, because everybody's coachable. Everybody's trainable. I can do your campaign training, no problem. come in once. There's no monthly retainer. It's really simple. So keep that in mind when you're putting together your campaign. Just good luck on the campaign.